Otakuology Podcast with Otaku Mike Engine Graves.
When we start, so
you have a question for me?
Yeah, but we'll go ahead and start.
Okay. Hey guys, Jen here with the Otakuology Podcast. Best podcast in the world.
Are you about to say bad podcast? Or is that what you about to say? Bad podcast in the world?
No, I think it was gonna be something else. Some
Oh,
other
okay.
B word. Bash podcast. And today we're going to be covering a recent movie that came out on Netflix called Spiderhead, that I enjoyed. So, anybody that is listening to this up front, maybe we can get you to watch it. I feel like I have a problem with most people that I've tried to talk to this about because they feel like it's going to be some kind of a spider movie.
Oh, yeah?
And they have like arachnophobia or whatever, and they're like, I can't watch that. I'm like, it's just the name of an island.
Okay, so here's my question.
Okay.
So, we're like an anime and manga podcast, and sometimes we do cover live action movies. How does this incorporate with our podcast?
Because it was written as a book.
Okay.
It was a sci-fi thriller.
Sci-fi. So one of the things on it said it was cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this cyberpunk? This is nothing cyberpunk about it.
Right. Maybe it's because the things were hooked into their backs.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe. That could be like a whole nother topic that we discussed too, is how people rate different things. Because there's a lot of things that I feel like are labeled now, like this being cyberpunk, or
well, it was one of like the tags on it for Netflix was that like it was like thriller, psychological, and cyberpunk. I think it was on the screensaver that popped up.
Yeah,
for the movie.
Well, and the weirdest thing is I'll have stuff for movies or whatever that are like, oh, would you like something related? I'm like, oh, they're going to give me something related to the genre or something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And they give it to me because it's related to the director.
I had one thing one time. I don't know if Netflix was acting up, but it was like science fiction. And it was nothing but like Nazi documentaries.
Science fiction. Here's a bunch of Nazi documentaries for you.
My wife watches like a lot of like the World War II documentaries and stuff,
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's how it like mixed with our algorithm, because I watch a lot of science fiction stuff, and like it was just Nazi. It was like Nazi documentaries and like outer space stuff or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, I was like, how the fuck did this happen?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, because we both share the Netflix thing, so it goes off of what we both watch. On Netflix,
gosh.
Yeah. So
that
for sure.
That is too funny.
I just have to say though, before we get started, when you recommended this to me, like I wanted to fight back so hard, like not to cover this.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't want to fucking cover this movie. This movie just doesn't look interesting to me.
Did it become interesting?
A little bit, but I mean, we'll go on from there,
Okay.
Yeah.
I had some people ask me about it, and they kind of thought the same thing, and then when I start telling them the premise of it, they're like,
"Well, like
actually, this sounds like good."
I saw the trailer for it, and there's one thing that kind of bugged me about it, but we'll get into that when we talk about the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So starting out, I can't remember what our main guy's name is.
His name is Jeff. He was played by Miles
That's
Teller.
that's right. Yeah, the two big names in this one are probably Miles Teller and Chris Hemsworth,
Yeah, they are the big names in this movie.
because they're nobody else in this, I think, is a recognizable
That's
character.
not true. Nathan Jones, ex WWE wrestler, is in this movie.
Was that the big tattooed guy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's in this
Oh,
movie.
oh my gosh.
I was like, is that Nathan Jones in this
Well,
movie?
we'll have to circle back to that in a second, because there was one scene that I was like, oh no. But
There's one
no,
scene where
so
he's reading the book, which is based on the movie that they're currently in.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
But we start out and we find out that they are testing this new drug called N20.
and no, it's called like N40, right?
Yeah, maybe that's it. I gotta think about how they split out a bingo card. Yeah, so they're testing N40, which is
Just call it the love drug. That's what it's called, the love
yeah,
drug.
yeah. It's a love drug, and everything's colored in this, which is kind of funny when you see them
It's
do stuff.
N40. That's what it's called. N40.
Okay,
Yeah, it's called love drug. Is what it's called.
yeah. And they're testing out these drugs for a pharmaceutical company, and so they will put people in a room and then like turn this drug on and see what do they see stuff like, is
Like,
the person more appealing.
Yeah, like what effects do they have and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We also have to mention that these are all convicts and prisoners.
That's true. This is, if you like the movies like The Condemned, with Stone Cold Steve Austin, or shit, I can't remember the other one. There's one other one that I own, but I can't remember the name of it, where they do that. Oh, and Death Race. I didn't even think about that one. But if you
Death
like
Race.
movies like that, where they have convicts that actually are fulfilling like some kind of a role, science like, then this is probably a movie that you'll enjoy.
Okay. I guess you could compare this to those. I don't really think so.
Well, because they all take place for prisons and
I
being
know,
tested.
but this isn't your normal fucking prison. It's on like an island. There's like state of the art equipment there. They don't have prison cells technically. They don't have prison guards in this facility. The inmates basically sort of run everything when it comes to like eating, doing chores, stuff like that, like preparing
The
meals
shit,
and stuff.
the shit figure.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Like it's all on the fucking honor system. They can go wherever and please wherever they want, basically.
Yeah, as long as they don't go outside of the facility.
It's a prison, but it's not a prison. Like they're living very cushy, aside from like the weird drugs that they're being pumped full of in their like spinal cords, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, continue.
But our main guy also gets taken out to kind of like look at different landscapes. Some of them are beautiful. Some of them are like where construction's going on. And they are trying to get like his honest opinion and see what the love drug actually makes you see or whatever, which they also use another one, which is like a truth serum.
It's called like
Um,
verbal. It's like a verbal drug where like it makes you talk more.
yeah, almost every one of like the weird names for the drugs, like related to what it was.
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of weird, but then I was like, oh, I guess I kind of get this, maybe.
kind of. Yeah, and then this is where they put him in a room with another girl, and they're both given the love drug, and they basically like fuck the shit out of each other. Which
Yes.
was funny. Like that part was funny when they just like randomly like fell out of a chair and they
Oh yeah, the chair fell over.
the chair fell over.
Yes.
Like they're like, are you okay?" Because
Are you
they're
guys
watching them
okay?
through this, and then like they just start fucking again. They're like, ah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And then that happens again because they have this weird pull system of who you're supposed to hook up with and get with.
uh huh.
Uh, and then he sleeps with the older lady that looks kind of like a crackhead.
I think she was a crackhead. I think she was like a crackhead, like prostitute kind of thing.
Yeah.
She very much looked like disheveled, and Jeff ends up getting like a STD from her or something like that because of them having sex with each other
Did
at
he?
that point. Yeah, because he's like, hey, at one point he's like, hey, I'm not doing this. I'm not fully recovered. You guys didn't give me that cream I asked for.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah.
goodness gracious. I don't remember him saying that. But
Yeah,
with
it's in the scene with the Rogan guy.
okay.
Yeah.
But I did think it was funny with that girl where when they're watching it, the other doctor guy that's in the room with Chris Hemsworth's character, he kind of leans over and he goes, "Do you think she just?" Yeah, she just. And they're talking about her having like an orgasm or whatever.
Yeah. That was weird. That was
And it was
really
like,
weird.
so that didn't happen with the other people? Like,
I
I'm
guess not.
confused. I'm
I guess
confused.
not because they had this whole like chart with who interacted with who and like stuff like that. It was weird. It was definitely weird in that aspect. You
Yeah.
know.
And then they basically bring those people back in later on to
hmm
see if they're going to give them the black drug, death.
It's
Uh,
Daxaflon, Darkaflon. That's what it's called. Darkaflon, Flonix or something.
yeah, something like that. It's weird.
Darkaflox. It's called Darkaflox.
Yeah, I mean all these names get really weird with all of that.
Yeah,
But whenever you have this drug, it basically makes all of like your fears come out,
yeah.
and
And I
you know,
think I think Jeff was the only one who was on it so far at that moment, who has been on it. I think it seemed like.
I don't know because we didn't really fit with anybody else. But whenever the one scene where he sees the bingo card, there was a
hmm
sticker on it.
Yeah,
So I don't know because like with the N40 drug, the love drug or whatever. Um, Whenever we see all of this other stuff, um, the guy will put a star on it like he's trying to get a full house bingo,
yeah,
and that one had a star on it. So
hmm
I don't know.
yeah. It was
I,
it was weird. There were some open unanswered questions in this movie for sure at some points
right.
because
Well,
like it
and the
it
other
ki-
thing that I questioned
uh,
was the freedom that Jeff had because it seemed like nobody else had that.
I think Jeff had more freedom than everybody else because I from what I gathered, I think he might have been the first participant in this study.
Oh yeah,
It
I didn't
seemed
even think about that.
it seemed like,
Yeah,
because he was more willing to do things like instead of than the other people. It seemed like, so I guess he possibly had more freedom, and he was also the person we're following in this story. You
yeah.
know, when we find out why Jeff was in prison, he killed his best friend in a drunk driving accident. Then later
No,
on, we find
yeah,
later I was saying later on, it just shows us him killing his friend, but later on, you also find out he also killed his girlfriend as well. Because you're led to believe that his girlfriend is still alive within the movie, because he's calling her from a cell phone at from time to time, leaving messages for her, but he's leaving
yeah.
messages for nobody.
Right.
It's sort of like almost like a coping mechanism in that aspect. Like they're letting him like go to a top of the mountain because they call it like free Fridays, and they take him off the premises and take him up to a mountain, let him make a phone call to a dead woman,
Right.
which we find out
Which
later on she's dead.
I thought that was pretty crazy too, because we only get to see it once, but then he actually sits there and kind of leaves this really in depth like conversation to her, and then
Hmm.
he says, "Hey, this will be the last time that we'll talk." Well, then
Yeah.
I forgot somebody does something, and the number gets called again,
Hmm.
and we hear that the mailbox is now full. So you find out basically that when he's like, "This is the last time," it was the last message that could be left before the mailbox was full.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of crazy. But what did you think about his crash scene? Because every time they played it, I was like, "Oh my god!"
That looked like it hurt a lot because he got ejected from the car, and
Yeah,
like it's like it kept, like we saw it and then we kind of saw it again a little bit in flashes, and then we saw the full experience of what actually happened. Like his girlfriend was still alive, his friend was dead, but he couldn't get his girlfriend out of the back of the car, and then the car blew up, so he caused him to like shoot out away from the car again for a second time. I mean, but I
yeah,
mean, you can see like it would weigh heavy on him because nobody really truly knew why each of them were there. Like they weren't able, or they weren't technically allowed to talk about why they were there,
right,
and and stuff like that. But when we only got to see like a few of the uh prisoners, we didn't really get to see a lot of their backstories or hear their backstories. They were just there because it mostly focused on Jeff, and then the other character named Lizzie, who was like the chef prisoner for who we find out that Jeff has a connection with, and
yeah,
because Jeff is really, really good at etch a sketch drawings with an etch a sketch, and uh,
right,
Steve, the guy who runs the facility, finds out that Jeff has a connection with Lizzie, and this is where things start to get interesting. But I want to circle back to, I think it happens before this. Does it happen before this when oh god, it's his name is Rogan, the big beefy guy. Does this
yeah.
happen before uh when he has before no after Jeff has sex with Heather? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
it's after he has sex with Heather and the other chick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I want to go ahead.
what the experiment is can you have the love drug and still experience love feelings off of it for that person,
Yeah.
and will you use that dark
Dark and
Flux.
Flock. Dark and
Yeah.
Flocks.
Dr.
Yeah.
Flux, and I don't know.
Dark and Flocks and
Will
Sauce.
will you use Darth Vader? Will you use that on somebody that you've basically had sex with and loved and all this other stuff from the love drug?
But I love this. I love this part because it happens after that, and after he has sex with the crackhead. Um,
Yeah,
that part was kind of funny. Uh, well, he goes into the room because when we mentioned this room, there's like a chair and a lamp and some cameras. Nothing really in this room, and they're both sitting there like looking at each other. And then he puts two and two together, and he's like, fuck that, no, I do not acknowledge. I do not acknowledge this. No, I'm not giving my consent. I am not having this man fuck me. And this is where we
right.
find out that he got
Or vice
or
versa.
vice versa. He gets an STD. He's like, I still haven't recovered from the last one. He's like, fuck that.
Right.
And you just see this weird, like, awkward conversation with Steve and Jeff, and it's just weird. But we
Yeah.
do find out that Steve does find out that uh Jeff has feelings for Izzy, but he
Yeah.
thinks that he had before that he thinks Jeff has feelings for Heather, and they put Heather in a room and they give her the Dark and Phlox drug, and she goes ballistic. Like he has to he she
Well,
has to be on the
they do that before.
no, it's after.
Well, no, they do that before the stuff with Lizzie. So because
Yeah,
of the N20, he has to do it for
it's in 40,
N40.
the love
He has to
drug.
he has to do it for Heather, and he's got to do it for the crackhead.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
and
that's another thing is they find out, or he finds out by talking to Steve that that him and Rogan were in the room together for basically Heather to sit there and pick one of them to give the dark flux to.
yeah,
And then there's a really quick scene where they're in the room again and he already knows what's going on, and he uh, tells the other girl, which I can't remember what her name is. He says, "Oh,
Lizzie.
no, the other one, the crackhead."
Uh, I don't know. I don't think she gets a name.
But he says, "Hi, whatever her name is,"
Yeah,
because he knows that they're both sitting there to see if she's going to give one of them the dark
yeah.
influx. So
Because he guess the whole thing is based on is the Dark and Phlox thing, and Jeff has been the one who's been on it and stuff, and so they give him like the verbal drug, which makes him like talk more, and he has to sit there and watch Heather put the Dark Phlox in her, and this is where Heather starts to lose it, destroying everything, and she kills herself. She like slits her
right,
own throat, type of thing. And this is where I felt
would
like it got
would you
the whole
would would you say she like OD'd on it, kind of, sorta?
well. Yeah, I would say she did because she broke her the medicine thing in the back of her back. Like she broke it, and it
Yeah,
went up to like lethal levels. And that's where she kills herself with like a piece of pottery or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Like she like slits her throat. This
it
is
was
where
wood.
was it wood? Okay.
Yeah, it was
This
from that stand.
this is where things got interesting for me because Steve ends up going in there, but he drops his keys before he gets there, and his assistant Mark is in there too. And this is where things get interesting because like he puts his little diary notebook away in a locked drawer, and Jeff ends up getting a hold of it, and he starts figuring stuff out. He finds out that there's no board. Steve is communicating with. It's all Steve. Steve is
Yeah,
doing everything. Steve's
and and
company.
and Steve's been pushing that like up until this point that hey,
Yeah.
there's a board that does stuff, and well, I can try and communicate with them, but all this so that instantly like whatever Steve's last name is the name of the whatever company.
Oh yeah, I forget what his last name is.
It's weird. It's something weird. That's why I
It's
was like,
something weird. Yeah.
I'm not gonna remember this.
Yeah.
Um, but we find that out. We find out that he's been naming all the drugs off of a bingo card.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was kind of funny to see him
Right.
name all the
That's
drugs.
probably my favorite part.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite part is when he pulls up the bingo card and Jeff goes, he's naming all the drugs off of a fucking bingo card.
Well, after Heather gets killed, is this when Jeff finds out that Steve has a MOBA pack installed on his body as well, and he's been taking the drugs?
Um, I think he finds out right before
Okay, okay.
because the doctor guy is putting the stuff in for him,
He's not
and
a doctor;
he
he's like an assistant.
thought he was more like a nurse or something.
Maybe I'm
Maybe I
not
don't
for
know.
sure what he was.
He's got some kind of a medical thing.
Yeah.
Um, but he's the one that actually comes around and puts all the drugs in the people's uh, packs,
Hmm.
and
And he gives them like different doses and stuff.
he's putting it in Steve's, and that's when Jeff walks up and Jeff sees it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and he's like,
which
and Steve kind of gets like, oh, sorry, you had to see that, type of
yeah,
thing,
you didn't let me
which,
know. Which was kind of funny though, because the whole part before that he was like, am I not like a good like caregiver or whatever? He's like,
yeah,
are your doors not open for me to come see you whenever I need to, or vice versa? And
yeah,
then whenever that happened, instantly you're like, this guy fucking lied
yeah,
about
yeah,
all. Well, why didn't you let me know ahead of time that you were going to come here?
yeah. But
Which
they go ahead.
that opens up a scene that we'll get a little after this, because then everything else happens with Heather and all that, and then they're kind of like shutting down for the night, and Jeff ends up going to talk to Steve, and then it looks like they have like a pot scene, where
They're
they're
getting
gonna
high
sit there and
off the
smoke.
laughing drug.
Yes,
They were getting high off the laughing drug, and Steve starts to open up to Jeff kind of, and starts to like kind of tell him more stuff about what's going on and stuff, and because of this horrible thing that's happened, he saw Heather kill herself, which was
right,
a terrible experience. you know
right,
like Steve tried to lie to Jeff and say that Heather was still okay, but she was dead.
yeah.
She was dead. Yeah. And this is where
Which
after this, go ahead.
which I thought it was kind of weird how far the room was, or to get into the room from the observation room.
Yeah, that took a while.
I was like, well, are you walking around the whole facility to get to it? Like,
I think it was like a big old circle, like that he had to walk around basically to get to it. Like it was on the other side because there were multiple rooms in the viewing area.
yeah.
Like there was more than one room that they've established. There were like 3 rooms that they could go to and
Oh
observe
my
people.
gosh, the food guy.
Oh yeah,
Oh my god. Yeah, I just remember that. That was one of the rooms that they put beside them, and the guy was sitting there eating all that stuff.
was he? I might have missed that part.
Yeah, it was the guy at the very end whenever they're trying to
Oh,
leave and
we'll
he
get we'll
runs up.
get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Because that part's pretty funny.
But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's just this one guy, if you watch the movie, you just continuously see him like eating,
Yeah,
and it's like all the time.
yeah. I must have missed that part that he was continuously eating.
Yeah. So when we see the first scene where Jeff and Lizzie are in the cafeteria,
Yeah.
and he's kind of telling her a little bit about his past. Um, we kind of like scroll past him in the background, and he's eating.
Okay.
Uh, that happens like again, and then we see him in the room, and he ends up puking, and they're like, "You think that guy's shit finger?
Oh
Because he
yeah,
seems
because
he's sick.
there's a whole side story about somebody rubbing shit on everything. With
Which I was.
the
I feel like I was a little upset because right when you start the movie is the only time you see the black guy that's in this.
no, you see him a
And
couple times.
well, I mean, when the drugs affected him.
Yeah,
And then we see him later on. He's on uh, bathroom duty.
yeah, and he's looking for shit fingers.
Yeah, and he's like, every time he goes, I have to clean somebody's shit off of all the walls. If I find him, I'm going to kill him. And he confronts Jeff about it. He goes, "You
Yeah,
better not be shit finger Jeff, or our friendship will be gone."
over, Jeff. Don't you better not be shit fingers. Yeah, but this is where Jeff finally confesses to Lizzie that his girlfriend is actually dead. He killed her on accident. And we don't know exactly what happened in Lizzie's past because she has a mysterious past. Um, we also find out that uh, Steve wants Steve wants Jeff to administer Dark and Flocks to Lizzie as well, because we find out that Jeff does has feelings for Lizzie
Yeah,
through an etch a sketch drawing of all things.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Steve, the reason why Steve wants to test it out on Lizzie is because he knows that with Heather and the crackhead, that Jeff was under the influence of N40, the love drug,
Uh huh.
and he wanted to test out if you naturally
Would do
had
it.
feelings for somebody, was that affected at all?
Yeah. Which was really interesting to think about in that situation. Like, because you did see them over time uh grow and have a relationship, kind of like a friendship almost. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think it was like sexual at all. It was just like two.
No, I don't think you could do anything sexual or whatever besides be friends outside of when you were in the experimentation room.
What's that beeping sound?
Oh, that's the washer.
Oh, okay.
That's crazy. That's like 2 rooms over.
Well, it's beeping and it's picking it up.
Oh,
You
okay.
want to pause?
Yeah.
Where were
Click.
we? We were talking about you
Uh,
washing clothes, right? That's what we were talking about.
yeah, we were talking about me washing clothes. I'm not washing clothes. Somebody else is washing clothes. Um, no, we were talking about Lizzie and the Dark Flux.
Yes, the Dark Flux. So Jeff doesn't want to administer this, and Steve's like, okay, well you can sleep on it, sleep on it, and we'll come back tomorrow about this kind of stuff. And Steve tells Mark, who is the guy who puts all the drugs into the people, he's like, hey, go up his drugs. And at the end of the night, they always change out the drugs and whatnot. And this is where Jeff confronts Mark and basically has Mark spill the beans. And he's like, this is wrong, Mark. This is wrong. And we he and
And he,
I, gue-
he
I
brings up the
guess
bingo card.
yeah, he brings up the bingo card. He brings up that the whole he Steve runs everything in this situation. It's all Steve. There is no board directors or whatever that he has to report to, and he basically calls Mark out on it, and he's like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? And Mark says that he thought he was going to actually help people, and that's why he wanted to make a difference in the world. But you can
Yeah.
see Mark over the movie wane and kind of regret what he's doing, because
Yeah.
in that aspect. So but Mark, you find out that Mark gets the quote sniffles, and
Yeah.
he's gone for the day. So it's just Jeff and Steve in the room, and then Lizzie's in the room as well.
Yeah.
And he
Well,
wants,
we do see one thing though when the bingo card is first pulled out, which one of the only things that doesn't have a sticker on it yet is this one called B6.
uh-huh,
Um, and then whenever Jeff sees Mark, he actually asks him about that.
yeah,
So then
yeah.
we actually find out about it after this whole thing with Lizzie.
B6 ends up being a controlling drug that controls people, and
Yeah.
we find out that the prisoners have thought that they've had free will this whole time, but they haven't had free will. They've always been
Right.
under the B6 drug.
Right.
So it wasn't them like always agreeing or acknowledging that they're going to get this stuff put into them. The other drugs were ended up being like side projects, and uh, the real focus was on the B6 drug, which was OBDX, I think it was called. They called it,
Yeah.
which is it's a funny name, just saying. Um, but Mark switches out Steve's drugs and empties out Jeff's drugs. So Jeff has no drugs in him whatsoever. He
Right.
takes Jeff's drugs and puts them into Mark. And as Jeff has control over like this phone that controls everybody's drugs and everybody's like medical packs, he starts pumping in the drugs to Jeff. I was turned uh, to Steve, and like sort of takes control of the situation,
Yeah.
and like starts making him like freak out and laugh and all this kind of stuff. And we get the big climax of the movie, which is we find out that Mark has gone to the authorities to take down Steve, and uh, but Lizzie
Take
gets
him out.
the dark influx put in her,
Yes.
and like it's killing her because Steve puts it in her, and then her pack gets like messed up, and it's all going into her. I think it was right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. It's messed up, and we have this big old fight with Jeff and Steve, and Steve's pack gets messed up. Sorry, and he's getting everything pumped into him at once, which was a pretty funny scene to see Chris Hemsworth like to have different reactions and stuff
Yeah.
while trying to do it, and like it knocks him out. They Jeff and Lizzie go to escape, uh, and we find out that Steve goes
Well, and
to
we did find out finally why she was there too.
yeah, because she accidentally killed her baby.
Yeah.
She left her baby in a hot car for like 3 hours on accident.
Yeah. When she worked at
She's
Walmart.
she worked at Walmart or something like that,
Yeah.
which that was sad to think about. Like I don't know, that was just very sad. That was a very sad story. Like I thought it had something to do with like a child or something, but then
Yeah.
it did, and I was like, oh, that's shitty. Like that's shitty. Like
Yeah.
really shitty. Uh, but all the prisoners start going after Lizzie and Jeff, and this is where we find out who exactly Shitfingers is. We find out that Shitfingers is the
It's the crackhead.
the crackhead.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, it's Shitfingers,
Right.
and they
She
were
tries to
trying to
touch him with it.
they were trying to not to get touch with the Shitfingers, which was
Yes.
that part was pretty funny because I
Well,
had
and
I had
And then
I was curious like who Shitfingers was,
yeah,
like in the back of my head. I had my theories, but I didn't know for sure.
I didn't know. I was like, who is this gonna be?
Yeah, I didn't know if we were ever gonna get Shitfingers, like who actually Shitfingers was,
Yeah,
but we got it. And then we get the one guy who he's getting ready to beat him up with a rolling pin, and here they just give him a key to the pantry, and he's like, okay, we're good.
yeah.
That part with
Well,
the
and then the guy that threatened him earlier about it, after they knocked out the actual shit fingers, then he
yeah.
comes around there, the cleaning guy, and he's like, "You were shit fingers."
He was like, no, I wasn't Shitfingers. Yeah, but they end up escaping, and Steve's pack is messed up, and he gets off into an airplane, and he blows himself up on accident because he accidentally kills himself.
Right.
You
Which I
know?
think that's such a good scene because he's flying, and one of the first things that we see actually with Jeff is how things look or whatever, and
Uh
it's
huh.
the N20 or the N40 like being really high up or whatever, and that's what hits Steve
Hmm.
last. So as he's going into this thing to fly into a mountain to blow up or whatever, he's like, "Oh, that's so pretty."
I kind of wish that he would have got like his comeuppance and like actually like arrested and put in prison because that was like a fear of his was being put in prison.
Right, right.
I mean, I think that would have been like the best comeuppance.
Yeah,
I kind of felt like him blowing up in an airplane crash was kind of a little like weak in the storytelling part or aspect of
yeah,
the movie. To me personally, like
yeah,
I mean, it was kind of a shock because I was like, oh, he's probably gonna explode or crash the airplane or something.
yeah,
Who knows? But yeah, I mean that I don't know that part I didn't really care for. Like it was
yeah.
kind of funny, but I was like, oh, like that's it. Like he just blew up, and then they sail off into the sunset, type of
Right,
thing. You know?
right. I mean, he had all those drugs and stuff acting on him too, so
Yeah,
maybe that's
yeah,
not exactly how he would have reacted the whole time or whatever.
uh huh, yeah.
So,
So what did you think about this movie?
um, so I really like this movie, but I
Uh huh.
really think it came into play because I had really low expectations. Like I saw the trailer and I was like, "Oh, that looks like a fun movie to watch."
Why'd you have
But
low expectations? Because it was a Netflix movie.
I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
because um like I thought the idea behind it might have been cool, but
Uh huh.
just kind of who they picked to go with the cast. You know, what's Jeff's actor's name?
Miles Teller. I
Okay.
think it is. I think it is.
So almost everything I've seen Miles Teller in, he's been a more comedic actor.
Uh huh.
And so him playing a serious role kind of was going to throw me off with that.
I have to say though, because I have seen him in some more serious roles. Like there was one that's really good called Whiplash, which is he's about like a drummer
Yeah.
and like studying to be a drummer at college or whatever, which is really good. Which kind of brought him up to like more of the serious roles in movies. And
Yeah.
he's had some other stuff like he was in I think he was in that terrible Fantastic Four movie that came out a couple years ago with him and Michael B. Jordan in it. Um, but he was recently in that new
Yeah.
Top Gun movie, the new Top Gun
Oh
Maverick
yeah.
movie, and he has more of like sort of a serious role in that. Like I thought he was good in this. Like I think he's good with those serious roles.
Yeah.
Um because he is definitely one of those actors who did come up in like the the teenager movies, like the American, not like American Pie, but sort of like American Pie type of movies, sort of,
Yeah.
which is more of a comedy, which I think he does
Well,
comedy pretty
yeah.
well.
Well, American Pie and Van Wilder, different ones
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know. So I mean, I get where you're coming from in that. My problem was Chris Hemsworth in this movie. Like I thought
Yeah.
Miles Teller was really good in this movie.
Yeah.
My problem was Chris Hemsworth. Like the way he was playing this character, this like obnoxious, like smart character. I
Yeah.
really had a problem. Like I just couldn't see Chris Hemsworth as like the quote bad guy.
Right.
Like he was the villain of this movie, and I had such a hard time seeing him as like playing a villain role. Like
Yeah.
it
I
was
agree with
so
that.
off. It was so
I
off.
I think the thing that threw me off was like I could see him in a villain role, but uh more as like a killer or somebody that
But I mean, like
actually like
I've
went after
I've
somebody.
I've only seen Chris Hemsworth in one other movie, which was like that Ghostbusters movie that he was
Yeah.
in, where he wasn't Thor.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's because so much associate him with Thor so much that
Yeah.
I can't really see him as other characters. So I might have to watch more other Chris Hemsworth movies
Yeah.
where he plays other characters and stuff like that. Because I mean, I feel like he sort of fit that obnoxious role, but then I sort of feel like he didn't fit it. Like I'm
Yeah.
like 50-50 on it, the obnoxious villain, like, because he was very much like I don't say like a millennial or like a hipster. He was almost like a hipster bad guy, almost
Yes.
kind of.
Yes.
Uh,
Well,
so
see, and that's what I'm saying. I could imagine him more so in a role where he was a upfront killer, where he had to go and physically do things to people. But him kind of being put, and I would agree with you on Thor is the role that everybody's going to see him and think
yeah,
about. So even in a role like that, he would be a killer. For him to be like a non-evasive person that wasn't like ever aggressive or anything like that, because we don't ever see him like lose his shit or anything in this.
no, he does at points
Um,
towards the end.
yeah, but it just, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think that he was used as strongly as he could have been.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was just the role, and maybe it was just me looking at him in that role.
Yeah.
Um, it very much reminded me of this movie. Oh God, it was called like the Stanford experiments. I think it was called,
Oh yeah.
where they simulated a jail in like a college. It's a really interesting movie. I think
Yeah.
Miles Teller might be in that movie too as well. But that's a good movie if anyone's ever seen it. It's based on actual events that happened.
Yeah. It's
Um,
based on a true story.
yeah, it's actually a pretty good movie. Um,
Yeah, I've seen that one too.
yeah, that one's good. But
Maybe we'll have to watch it and cover it for the podcast.
that's what this movie kind of reminded me of a little bit. Was
Yeah.
that? But like I don't know, like I didn't like I thought the movie was not bad. It wasn't my favorite movie watching, but I did get a little more invested as we get into like when he like actually went and like started looking up stuff. Then
Yeah.
I started to get somewhat more invested in like what was going on. Other than that, like I didn't really care. Like
Yeah.
I was
Well,
just like all
and
nonchalant about it.
I really hate the fact of we're kind of brought in at the end of all these experiments and we really don't know about anything
I
because
thought possibly this could have
when
been this could have been like a potential like mini series or something instead of a movie.
I would agree. I think it would have been a lot better to have a build up to it.
Yeah.
And because I mean, when we pull out the bingo card, we know that there's got to be like 24 different drugs on there, right? And we're
Yeah.
only showed like 5.
True. Yeah.
And in some aspects, some of those were stupid. So like our
Yeah.
B6, our control one, I mean, made sense for the whole movie. To find out at the end, oh my gosh, this is what it really is. N40 made sense. The yellow
Hmm.
one, the true serum, the dark flux. And so when we actually got the laughing one, I felt like it came out of like nowhere, because I was like, okay, well, we have all these other ones, but this is the only time we're ever going to touch on this.
Yeah.
And
I don't.
to
Yeah.
not touch on like the other like 19, I
Hmm.
I felt a little weird about it. So, like you said, I would have preferred this to be more of like a 8 to 10 episode miniseries, where maybe we did cover little bits and pieces of these other drugs and
Yeah.
whatnot, and led up to, hey, like Jeff's first day of trying the dark flux or whatever,
Hmm.
and having that like, oh my god, what's happening to Jeff, and then lead farther into it to everything that happened now, and
Yeah.
what it kind of ended as.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this is a movie like I would necessarily recommend anybody. Uh, I don't think it's a movie I probably ever will watch again. Like, it's not bad. It's just for me, it was just very mid.
yeah,
I liked Miles Teller in it. That was good. I liked him; he was good. And the other actors were good too. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't hit with me. So yeah,
yeah.
I
what would you rate?
what would I rate it out of
Yeah,
5?
yeah.
A 3.
Okay.
Why?
With I was just asking. With this one, I would probably go a 4. I
Okay,
Like I said, I felt like there were a lot of other things that could have been improved to even knock it up to a
but
4.5.
but you really like this movie, Jen Graves. You love this
I,
movie. You said.
I didn't say I love this movie. I
You
like
said
this
you
movie.
love this movie.
It was a good movie. I would watch it again,
Uh
but it was better than Spriggan.
huh. I mean, yeah, Spriggan kind of sucked ass.
But no, I mean there were improvements that I feel like could have been made to it, or maybe different actor slash actress choices
Uh huh.
to make some of the other stuff a lot better.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
that
thought the other actors were fine. I'm curious like how much money was actually put behind this, like budget wise, because we don't get a lot of sets in this movie.
right. Yeah, well, so the other thing that I kind of was comparing this to, like in my head, was like Cabin Fever,
Oh yeah, I can see that.
where they have the whole like thing that people's like faces, like it's a flesh eating virus kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what in my head I was comparing this to.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I mean that's a movie that Cabin Fever is a movie I'd watch again too. But how you feel about this one, that's kind of how I feel about Cabin Fever. So I felt like this was a better Cabin Fever.
But
But
they're nothing alike.
right,
Cabin Fever is
so
more like a horror movie. This
and
is
then they
like
have
suspense.
Patient Zero.
This is like a suspenseful movie.
But yeah, I mean, I would recommend this to people. Like I said, I have recommended it to some people because I like the idea behind it.
Uh
Um,
huh.
but yeah, like I said, there's plenty of room for improvement.
Yeah,
So,
we'll have to see.
but
I don't think they
yeah.
will improve it. I mean, it's got like a 5 out of 10 on IMDb.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
But well, anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Let us know if you've watched this movie or not. Moving forward, if we prompted you to watch this movie. And we will catch you later on. Thanks for listening. And as always, see you next Tuesday. Bye.